Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and today we're looking at BioShock 2, released in November 2010, over 3 years after the first one. This game can best be described as the game no one really wanted, but we got anyway. Not because of what's actually contained within the game, but because that was the mindset during development. See, in entertainment, success is a 6-letter word spelled S-E-Q-U-E-L. However, BioShock director Ken Levine, a true creative, wasn't happy with publisher 2K Games' request as he wanted to focus on projects outside of BioShock, namely XCOM. Eventually, 2K and Irrational Games came to a rational agreement. Levine and Irrational Games would get to develop the next XCOM game, while select BioShock developers would be split off to form a new studio dedicated to developing BioShock 2. And while Ken Levine's immediate regret and desire to return to BioShock is a story for another day, the story of new studio 2K Marin is our main focus. 2K Marin was given 3 prime directives during development. The game had to ship for PlayStation 3, it had to have a multiplayer mode, and it had to be completed in 2.5 years. Due to time constraints and creative consensus led by new creative director Jordan Thomas, Rapture remained the setting as they all believed there were many stories yet untold in the underwater utopia. At first, Thomas wanted to make the game from the perspective of a little sister and dive deeper into the horror elements to create something Silent Hill-esque. However, that had to be scrapped when 2K Games told them that they viewed BioShock as their big shooter franchise comparable to Gears of War and Call of Duty, and I don't think anyone has ever insulted BioShock more.
What the actual fuck did you just say to me right now? Get out of my sight. Get out of my sight.
So let's take one last dive down below and press the needle to the record of Rapture's swan song as we give it everything we've got. The game begins in 1958, 2 years before the first game's events, as we're introduced to our 2 main characters, and the badass fact that we will be playing as a Big Daddy. We get a glimpse of Rapture in its, well, not its prime, but certainly more prime than anything we've seen, but that doesn't matter. Our little sister is screaming for help, and we get to watch the first-person POV of Big Daddy's big destruction. All seems well until...
There we are. He's perfectly safe now. This is not your daughter. Do you understand? Her name is Eleanor, and she is mine. Now, kneel, please. Remove your helmet. Now, take the pistol. Place it against your head. Fire.
Well, that certainly was a game. See you all next time.
Continue.
In reality, we are awoken 10 years later by strange radio interference, and we see that the Adonis Luxury Resort hasn't really been living up to the whole luxury thing for a while. Right off the bat, there are 2 important things to address. One, I know some people are bothered by the HUD of the Big Daddy helmet, so it can be turned off in the settings. Also, the large father immediately starts off with the drill weapon, this game's version of the wrench. Not as satisfying to hit enemies with, but probably does more damage. Anyway, we progress on through the resort.
Oh! Okay! In that case, you think you could elaborate?
More on them later. Much like the first game, you can explore around rooms to find items to scavenge and audio logs to collect. There are slightly more logs in this game, 129 to BioShock's 122, and I will be treating them the same way, mentioning important ones and highlighting the standouts. It's also worth mentioning that door locks have been slightly changed. You can no longer hack them if you don't have the code, but the location of the code will usually be made pretty clear to you, and the game will remember it for you. Past some vague threats about this lamb woman from the opening, we once again find a free, unlabeled substance to jam into our bloodstream.
Daddy was sleeping for such a long time, and Eleanor has missed you. Find her and you'll be all better.
Say what you want about this game, but at least they vastly improved the Little Sister design. With the Electrobolt Plasmid in left hand and the Little Sister to save, we see the biggest improvement in a game all about improvements. Plasmids and weapons can now be dual wielded. Seems it was only Jack who didn't know that having 2 different hands allowed him to do 2 different things at the same time. I'll chalk it out to the baby experiments. Speaking of those experiments, restoring power to the resort connects us with an old friend.
At last, a signal. You, who are bringing this dead city to life, listen. My name, it is Tenenbaum. I know who you are, and I am in much need of your help. Please, find me in the Atlantic Express train station.
Having just resurrected and already having 2 people to help, we head off through the newly opened door, along the way finding an audio log that informs us that the woman who indirectly shot us is Sophia Lamb.
Ow! You shot me, you a-hole!
And our little sister was her daughter Eleanor. We hear a bit more about how Sophia Lamb views herself as the mother of the Rapture family, and then pick up a dead Rosie's rivet gun. What? He won't be needing it. There's also a wrench that we can't pick up. Why would they do that? Continuing the trend of going literally anywhere but where the big arrow points leads to a bathysphere loading dock and the first installment of one of BioShock 2's best sub-stories.
Barely made it down alive. But here it is. And it's real. Rapture. This is where that thing took my poor baby girl. From what I saw in the sub, most of the city's in ruins. But there were lights here and there. And shapes moving. I'm rambling, scared, I guess. But maybe, if I find this Dr. Lamb I keep hearing over the PA, I'll find Cindy too.
We hear more from Mr. Meltzer later on, but the little sister is just up ahead.
Big sister doesn't want you playing with me.
Meet the Big Sister, aka a Big Daddy that put all its skill points in movement speed and face rectitude. As is the Rapture way, we'll learn more about them later. For now, all you need to know is that they hit like a truck and move like a sports car. Luckily, you don't have to kill one yet, as it will run away into Demeter's banquet hall. Chasing after her leads straight into a trap as she shatters the glass, flooding the place in an instant. But remember, Big Daddy outfits are modified diving suits, so the water pressure is no pressure. While cool, I don't really like how we explore the ocean floor this time around. It takes away from the oppressive and claustrophobic atmosphere of the first. They still have some great storytelling though.
Alright, diary. Last entry. Lizzie and I, we found a sphere, and we're going home. Ain't that right, baby? Next stop, topside.
Oh, I love you. It was you who saved us, Sammy. It was you, Button. What was that? What's that sound?
She's seen us. It's Lamb. Torpedo! I'm trying to...
Down where it's wetter and debatably better, we also see a future problem and a remnant of our previous method of Rapture re-entry. Speaking of which, it's time for our next look at this waterlogged Wonder City. While not as good as the opening before, I still absolutely love this shot. Without saying a word, it tells us that Rapture is falling apart and the places we're going to be exploring are far from their heyday. Arriving at the Atlantic Express station rewards us with our silent protagonist's designation, Subject Delta. Finally, I can refer to him by name. Before Delta can meet with Tenenbaum, he has to embrace his inner Neo and hack the system, which can now be done a lot more easily thanks to the remote hacking tool, which allows you to shoot hacking darts at objects to hack them from a distance. This is also where we meet the second biggest improvement, as our not-so-beloved BlackBerry game has been replaced with a quicker timing game.
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life!
Stopping in green is good, white is bad, red alerts security, and blue gives you a bonus. The number at the bottom indicates how many times the arrow can hit the border before you fail. While quicker, the added speed does make it a challenge, along with the fact that time doesn't stop when you're hacking, so you need to be alert. Through the dark, through the door, through where no one sane's been in quite a long time, brings Delta to an audio log from Andrew Ryan, who attributes Rapture citizens' desire to see a therapist to communism, and decides to acquiesce and bring in Dr. Sophia Lamb. And seeing as how a message from the doctor about how tyranny died with Andrew Ryan, we see how well the decision panned out for him.
The risk I took was calculated, but man am I bad at math.
But now, Delta can finally meet up with Tenenbaum and figure out what to do next.
I know you. That symbol on your hand marks you a dead man. 10 years, Subject Delta, since I watched you put a gun to your head and pull the trigger. But take heart. Out of your pain, paradise was born. I don't know how you survived, but your suffering is over now. These men will ease your burden. Please understand that like all I have done, this is an act of love.
Despite Sophia Lamb seemingly sharing the ability to work a webcam with the average senior citizen, she does have control over the splicers and uses them to send Delta down to a watery grave. It's little more than a detour though, as it takes Delta through the mail.
Father, it's me, Eleanor. I know you're awake in there. I can feel it. Mother won't be able to toy with you like that ever again. This plasmid is for you. If I'm right, you can use it now. Please, find me.
Hey, don't you dare interrupt me like that again, young lady. Now, I'm sure at least one person watching this is wondering why there's a train station in an underwater city that, to our knowledge, had no train lines and all transportation was done by bathysphere, and, well, our good friend Prentice Mill is here to answer that question.
There would be no Rapture without me. No city without the Atlantic Express. Ryan took his first grand tour on my flagship coach. But these days, personal bathyspheres are all the rage. My rails only connect the oldest parts of Rapture now. And the city's just left me behind. Plenty of cash in the bank, though. This private vehicle craze will blow over soon.
For a game as serious as BioShock, it felt weird to have a joke like that, but in a good way. It reminds us that the people of Rapture weren't all these unique fictional specimens, they were just people of the time. So his statement here is the equivalent of saying the internet may be just a passing fad, no matter how much we all think it should have been. Also in this area is the next log from Mark Meltzer on his quest to find his daughter Cindy. He discovers what happened to the people here and is spared by a splicer when he hears a little sister singing nearby. Packing in yet more notable audio logs into this one area, there is a recording of a debate between Andrew Ryan and Sophia Lamb. Ryan talks about how Rapture was built in reality by real men, while Sophia says reality is consensus.
Fucking commie gobbledygook.
When riding up to finally meet Dr. Tenenbaum, I'm reminded of the last time we were in a Rapture elevator. Hey Tenenbaum, you want to walk in the footsteps of Atlas and take this time to explain my end goal here?
You are a very old Big Daddy, bonded for life to a single little one. When you are apart for too long, your body begins to shut down like a coma. As long as the girl is in Rapture, you are trapped here as well. The name of your little one is Eleanor Lamb, daughter of Sophia. She is kept at Fontaine Futuristics on the other side of the city. You must go there and save her before it is too late.
In summary, Delta will die if he doesn't reach Eleanor soon, and Sophia is going to do everything she can to make sure we fail. Connecting/reconnecting with Tenenbaum, who has been given the glorious prize of an actual character model, she now decides to explain her motivations. After saving the little sisters in 1960, a new batch was created and she's come back to save them. She's interrupted by a broadcast from Sophia, who tells the entirety of Rapture that Subject Delta is now public enemy #1. This somehow alerts all of the nearby splicers of Delta's location, leading to the first of what will be many splicer gauntlets as Delta holds them off while Tenenbaum and the little sisters escape from the building and the game. As she says she has other people to help and passes Delta along to her friend Augustus Sinclair, that totally not important later guy mentioned by Suchong.
Well, look at you. A bona fide knight in armor, complete with iron horse. The name's Augustus Sinclair, sport, Esquire. Old Tenenbaum and I share an interest in the old Fontaine building, the very same place you'll find Eleanor Lamb. I think you and I can do business. Take the train to Ryan Amusements. I'll see you shortly.
One thing the detectives in the audience might have picked up on is the fact that Sinclair is Southern, which is what Atlas was originally going to be. A very nice touch.
Muy bien.
And while Sinclair is far from the most trustworthy man, he also has a vested interest in getting to Fontaine Futuristics, so he's an ally for now. He's located somewhere in the amusement park Ryan Amusements, so Delta hops aboard the train and heads right to it. The path out is blocked by a block of ice, and Sinclair informs Delta that there is an incinerate plasmid somewhere in the park, so he has to go find it. This is my main criticism with this game. As you'll begin to notice from this point forward, a majority of the game is just taking the Atlantic Express in a straight line before having to find something in the next area to unlock the way forward. I know it was much the same way in BioShock, but it feels so much more linear having to return to the same spot each time to progress along the same path. Through Ryan Amusements and its creepy butterfly imagery, Delta finds a log from Sophia Lamb that shows how little emotional connection she has to Eleanor, seeing her more as a tool for her vision than as a daughter. Delta also learns from Sinclair that he is an Alpha series model of the Big Daddy, the first ever group of Big Daddies made for the Little Sister program. They aren't as strong as the more modern Big Daddies, and they were only bonded to one specific Little Sister. Securing entry into the park rewards Delta with a machine gun, faster yet less accurate than the Rivet gun, good for when there's a lot of enemies close together. The Ryan Amusements experience also comes with a free sports boost tonic. Tonics work the same way as they did before, though now they're all shared between 18 slots that you have to buy with Adam. Speaking of Adam, Delta's gonna need some of it. And remember who we have to get through to get it? Daddy! That's right, Big Daddy fights are no longer entirely optional, meaning we've got an all-out Daddy fight! The fights are unchanged from before for now, as the fight is against a standard bouncer. Once he goes down, Delta can adopt the little sister, who mourns her previous Mr. Bubbles for about 5 seconds. This is the big change from before, as rescuing little sisters is not as easy as pressing a button. If you want the maximum amount of Adam from them, you're going to have to bring them to 2 Adam-filled corpses and protect them while they extract it. This is where the plethora of splicer gauntlets I mentioned earlier come in, as they'll try to attack the little sisters while she's gathering. Granted, aside from this one, the collections are optional, so you can return the little sister to a vent without doing them, or after one, or just harvest her from the beginning. But I like upgrades and getting the best ending, so of course I saved them all and did all the gathers. To make things easier, there are plenty of different ammo types, something I haven't really gone over, but they're self-explanatory to help you. For now, all Delta has is trap rivets. I'd also like to mention that Ryan Amusements is less of an amusement park and more of an Andrew Shrine, as there are exhibits tracking the foundation of Rapture, literally, and the Journey to the Surface ride where Delta heads next. There's also an audio log from Ryan in here that confirms that Sophia Lamb is a commie bastard.
Are you a red?
In case all the talk about the Rapture family and the death of the self didn't give that away. So we've gone from uber capitalist to uber communist, and if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times.
Communism sucks!
I'd like to take this time to question how Delta eats the food he picks up. As an Alpha series, he doesn't have his organs grafted to the suit, so he can take it off if he wants, but he keeps his helmet on the whole time. Is there a tube somewhere he passes it through? Also, there's a part of this ride that really doesn't gel with the others.
An artist strives to frame his ideals in an image, to challenge his audience and make his vision immortal. But the parasites say, no, your art must serve the cause. Your ideals endanger the people.
He says multiple times that he dislikes art that doesn't serve a purpose, and later on says that art should perceive the world as it is, not as it ought to be. So why have this grand spiel about unregulated art if he has strict beliefs on what art should be? I guess you could say it's just hypocrisy. As Delta nears the vent, Sinclair gives the familiar speech about how Delta will need all the Adam he can get, and will get the most by harvesting the little sister. Unlike Atlas, Sinclair doesn't call you an idiot for saving her, instead of respecting your decision. With Adam in wherever Adam is stored, Delta can leave the attraction and purchase Incinerate, but not before coming across the first Power to the People machine, which now includes special third upgrades for weapons that you can only get after choosing the weapon's 2 other upgrades. With the power of the sun in the palm of Delta's hand, he's free to return to the Atlantic Express and Atlantic Progress, but he's put under Atlantic duress by the arrival of an Atlantic Big Sister S. Unlike before, she won't leave, so Delta's going to have to take her down. Their speed and plasmid mastery are very annoying and very deadly, so make sure sure you keep moving and use all the tools at your disposal to take them down. Luckily, you're rewarded with a not insignificant amount of Atom for doing so. Originally, there was only going to be one big sister in the whole game that would continually stalk Delta before eventually being revealed as Eleanor. However, plans changed when they figured that Eleanor's actions and motivations as the big sister would make her irredeemable, and they wanted players to have the satisfaction of taking big sisters down. So now, a big sister will attack Delta after every little sister in an area has been taken care of, as if having to fight 3 big daddies and 6 splicer gauntlets per area wasn't enough for these little shits. Also, it is revealed that the big sisters are exactly what their name implies: grown-up little sisters. Uncured little sisters grow more unstable and feral as they age, so a plan was devised to put them in their own diving suits and make them a new kind of protector, looking after little sisters while also retrieving any Atom stolen from the Rapture family. Melting the ice in the way and restarting the line brings out Sinclair, who was just hiding out in a small room nearby the whole time.
Good evening.
He boards the train and the two choose to head on to Pauper's Drop. That's where the poor people live. According to Sinclair, the only way to counter Lamb's lockdown of the area is to find Grace Holloway in his old hotel, the Sinclair Deluxe, whose audio log can be found on the way out of Ryan Amusements, where she talks about her husband disappearing after organizing an anti-Ryan group. Grace was tasked with taking care of Eleanor while Sophia Lamb was in the Persephone Supermax prison. She disappeared, and when Grace saw her next, she was a little sister walking hand in hand with Delta, so she blames him for taking Eleanor from her. Delta needs a code to get into a place called the Fishbowl, which he conveniently finds located right next to a shotgun. You know how shotguns in games work: a lot of damage close up, less effective at longer ranges. Delta also finds a research camera nearby, and the technology has significantly upgraded. This one is a Technicolor video camera, so instead of photographing enemies, you start the recording and try to damage them in unique ways to get a higher research score. Once again, researching different enemy types enough will come with rewards. The way into the Sinclair Deluxe is blocked by a brute splicer, and since the research camera isn't complete without it, it is immediately followed by a mission to research a specific enemy. Brute splicers are the strongest splicer variant, boasting a lot of health and powerful physical attacks. Researching this tank wannabe rewards Delta with the drill dash attack, my favorite attack in the game. Now we can clear the path and confront Grace.
For Grace, the paradise of Andrew Ryan was most unkind. She spoke against him in song, and he had her blacklisted. It left her penniless. But in the family, she has found hope, a reason to draw breath. Ask yourself, Delta, do you deserve to take it from her?
Wait, you're telling me that people who feel a capitalist system has failed them will instead fall willingly into the arms of the insane who claim to have a cure to all their problems instead of just putting in the work to get back on top? Unrealistic game, I swear. Seriously though, I do like BioShock 2's attempts to make the main bosses of each area much more human and understandable than guys like Cohen and Steinman. Grace is just a woman who fell on hard times and believed Lamb had the cure. She couldn't have children of her own, so she saw Eleanor as her own daughter when she was tasked with raising her. So you can understand the guilt she feels over losing her and the resentment toward Delta, or as she calls him, Tin Daddy, for being Eleanor's big daddy.
Andrew Ryan told me that in Rapture, it didn't matter where you came from. Bunk! Times got hard and all our old bigotries bubbled right back up. But Dr. Lamb showed us that down under the skin, down under the money, down under our very name, we are family.
Also, there's an audio log on the way up that perfectly showcases Sinclair's brilliant yet morally questionable business strategies. He would sell boxes of syringe parts to residents of Pauper's Drop, then have them assemble the syringes and buy them back at double the price. While the assembler thinks he played Sinclair for a fool, Sinclair goes and sells the syringes to Andrew Ryan and makes a profit. Confronting Grace in her room presents Delta with a choice. He can kill the defenseless Grace or just take the override key and leave. Since you always want to remain unpredictable, also morals or whatever, it's better to leave her alive.
You had me under a gun, yet you just walk away? No monster alive turns the other cheek. No monster does that. A thinking man does that. I know that Dr. Lamb is no liar, but she's got to be wrong about you. Doesn't seem right now, letting you walk into that bushwhack waiting outside. I can't call off the family, but I can whisper a bit and improve your odds.
With the security overridden and Grace's mind successfully changed, it's time to escape this crowded slum and continue onward.
Hear me, O ye who would murder the Lamb of God! Ye shall never reach her garden!
Yo, what? Father Comstock, but it's too early.
Kid, come on, wake up now. There you are. I thought you rode that torpedo into the great hereafter.
Oh, so Sinclair is trapped in the flooded Dionysus Park and losing oxygen, so Delta has to drain the place out through the pumping station in Siren Alley, which is going to be easier said than done as the pumping station has been converted into a church ran by Father Simon Wales. A Rapture return to form, as Simon Wales is
100% but fucking sane.
Simon Wales and his brother Daniel were the architects that designed Rapture. However, they lost their credibility when Rapture started leaking. Simon, upset by this, sought counseling through Sophia Lamb, who corrupted his mind with more
commie gobbledygook,
to the point that he started a whole twisted religion around Sophia's ideology and Eleanor. Also, sometime after the events of the first game, Wales adopted Jack's adventure into his own religion, believing Jack was God sent to Rapture to kill non-believers and any followers of the Great Chain, the center of Andrew Ryan's philosophy. Siren Alley is also where Delta encounters the new evolution in Big Daddy technology, the Rumbler. They've got a big-ass arm cannon and are capable of sending out mini-turrets to rain bullets on your parade and ruin your whole day. The Rumbler, created by Dr. Gilbert Alexander as splicers got more adept at taking down the other kinds of protectors, was originally going to be in the first game. Back then, it was known as the Slow Pro FUM, short for Slow Moving Projectile Shooting F'd Up Melee.
Accurate name!
It would have kneeled down to launch their cannon and would have had a hook attack instead of mini-turrets. With introductions out of the way, Delta can further explore the blue-lit Rapture Red Light District, home to the undisputed best tonic in the game, Handyman. It allows you to repair hacked bots with Eve, and more importantly, gives them names! In the name of bests, Siren Alley also contains the spear gun, the spiritual successor to the crossbow, but not quite as good because it takes roughly 8 years to reload. However, it will still assist Delta in his quest to find Simon's hopefully more sane brother Daniel in the ritzy hotel-turned-brothel, the Pink Pearl. Hope and Rapture are seldom allies, so of course Danny is also a spliceopath trying to assassinate you like a ninja in this place of sex parties. So Delta chases the White Whale's shadow and pays for his scholarship to the Academy of the Damned beneath the wind and waves with thunder and lightning. With Daniel decimated, Delta now has the code to progress further, as it had been bestowed upon him by Simon in case he ever wanted to join the Kirch. Sorry, the Chult. The other side of Siren Alley contains an audio log from Andrew Ryan that reveals that he put Sinclair in charge of making Sophia Lamb disappear from Rapture, and what a stand-up job he did at that. There's also a log from Gail Alexander that reveals that Delta and Eleanor were the first successfully bonded pair, which is sweet. There's also a log from Mark Meltzer that demonstrates one of my biggest pet peeves with this game.
Lamb's followers are blinded by her promises, but it's clear that this religion she's cooked up is an elaborate front for some insane science experiment. She's twisting these girls into slaves, bringing Adam back to Lamb's science facility, Fontaine Futuristics. I've got to find it. I've heard the splicers mumbling that Alexander is the ferryman.
Sometimes the line that is said will be different from what the subtitles are, and I don't know why. My best guess is that they changed some of the lines last minute and didn't inform whoever made the subtitles. Let's recover with a better audio log from an old friend and foe.
This lamb twist went after Ryan all cockeyed. Solidarity angle was smart at first. Poor houses and bread lines, high-grade bunco. And that religious rights debate? Gotta wonder if she staged it just to watch Ryan squirm up there in his monkey suit. Lamb's only problem is she really buys into the whole song and dance. Saving the world? Ha! Rapture just ain't her town. Ryan's got her on ice somewhere now, and I figured that opens up the charity scam for the professionals.
While I do appreciate the efforts to make it seem like Sophia was actually there all along, I can't help but notice that she rarely, if ever, mentions the death of Fontaine, only Ryan. Which is strange, since Fontaine was the final boss and way more present throughout the game than Ryan was. On the subject of Fontaine, Delta can also go into his little sister's orphanage, and we find out that Eleanor ended up there after Grace lost her, which you could have figured out the second she became a little sister, but this is the confirmation. With all that out of the way, it's time to take the fight to the false father in Pumping Station 5, who is just a spider splicer with a fancy hat. He isn't alone though, his flock will endlessly run into his aid until he is defeated, so picking him out of the crowd and focusing on him is a priority. With the invisible spirit of Father Whales casting no shadow, Delta is free to drain the park, though Sophia responds in kind by flooding Siren Alley. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. According to communists, speaking of the Red Menaces, Dionysus Park was Sophia Lamb's private collectivist retreat and was created to be the commie counterpart to Andrew Ryan's Arcadia. Not only was entry free, but all kinds of art was allowed, specifically the kinds Ryan didn't like in Rapture. The place flooded sometime after the New Year's Eve incident, with it being reported as a cult-related mass suicide. It remained flooded until Delta the Plumber Protector pumped it dry, hence all the coral and algae everywhere. Somehow, the waterlogged audio logs in this place still work, including the one that I consider to be the creepiest because children scare me.
Dear Yellow-Eye Gull, my name is Billy, and I saw you the other day at the merry-go-round. I think you are very pretty, and I like your blue dress and the songs you sing about angels. My mom says your dad is scary, but I think he is strong and nice like a comic book hero. I got you a gift and put it in the basement where nobody will find it. The secret code for the door is 1080. I hope you like it. I will wave to you next time I see you, so you know it's me.
I doubt his gift was this power to the people machine or this log from Andrew Ryan where he nonchalantly addresses Delta's death. So what is it?
It's enough to make a grown man cry.
This game doesn't have nearly as many small touches like this as the first does, but this is a pretty great one, though it is immediately overshadowed by this.
No, get back. She's my little girl.
I love this moment so much. One brief line of dialogue during a moment we don't see, yet it reveals so much. Now we know that Mark's story, unlike the other ones told through logs, isn't over. He's been going through Rapture as Delta has. I don't know how we got to Dionysus Park so fast though, we just drained it. There's also this log to fill in a bit more detail.
I found her. Found Cindy by this rusted carousel. But she was just standing there, staring, waiting for the music. And she doesn't even recognize me. What have they done to her? Listen to her.
The man in the moon is a girl, Mr. Bubbles.
Listen, if anyone hears this, I have to know how to cure her.
No! Get back! She's my little girl!
Anyway, he's nowhere to be seen, but Sinclair is seeing a shadow in the new train station he found, and it's immediately revealed to be Stanley Poole, a former journalist that logs throughout the game have revealed was the inside man of the Rapture family, working on behalf of Sinclair to gather enough evidence on Lamb to convince her of being red for Ryan. On the way to meet him and discuss the deal he wants to make, Eleanor sends Delta the final weapon in the game, the grenade launcher. Yeah, that weapon you got in like the second area of the first game. Stanley wants Delta to bury the secret of Dionysus Park by taking care of all the little sisters in the area, as the atom they drain from the bodies here contains their memories, and Stanley doesn't want that. Also, I really like this line from Sinclair.
Well, I'd say he's hiding something, but he sort of took the fun out of that one.
The side activity you could choose whether or not you did is now the primary objective and the only way to progress. While Delta learns the story of Dionysus Park, let's learn the story of Dionysus Park. Originally, it was going to be the only pristine part of Rapture, completely cut off from the rest of the city and thus left intact as a glimpse into what Rapture used to be. After that, plans shifted to making it an attachment to Fort Frolic. Players would return to a now flooded Fort Frolic and discover a new section unexplored by Jack. There's actually a lot of interesting content that was cut for one reason or another, most of which I would have liked to see, like adding in survivors, people surviving on their own in Rapture that Delta would have been able to interact and trade with. A little brother therapy room to show that they did try to implant the Atom Slugs into boys as well, but it turned them too aggressive to use as gatherers. And an important character named Ava Tate that would have drastically changed this portion of the game. She would have been one of Rapture's premier filmmakers and a staunch propaganda machine like Sander Cohen. She'd be in control of Dionysus Park and use it to throw lavish parties, and Delta would have to work on behalf of Stanley to take her down. In doing so, he would have been exposed to a new drug named Eden that would have made him trip balls and see evil puppets and a 20-foot bunny monster of Sander Cohen. I don't know who thought this was a better idea, but it won out in the end. There's a lot of really cool concept art and other material in the Deco Devolution book if you want to check it out. I would have bought it for this video, but I don't like the idea of spending more money on an art book than the actual game the art is from. As for the important stuff that actually made it into this place, Delta slowly learns that Stanley was put in charge of Dionysus Park after Sophia was sent to Persephone and used the newfound power to throw huge parties. Eleanor learned that Stanley was the mole in the family and threatened to tell everyone, so Stanley sent her to the little sister's orphanage. He is the reason Grace lost her and the reason she became a little sister. Upon hearing of Lamb's escape from Persephone, he flooded Dionysus Park so none of her followers could tell her what happened. There's also this cool audio log from two old friends.
New face. I have a new goddamn face. Who'd have thought? Rapture. Paradise of the confidence man. I gotta keep revising the Atlas voice. I figure the accent gives me an excuse to lock myself in a room with a bottle and count the cash. War's on in full now, boy. And I've got a hell of a surprise for Andrew Ryan. Long time coming. And right about now, I expect the prodigal son is booking his flight.
And a frozen cat named Schrodinger in reference to Schrodinger's cat, the most well-known example of a quantum superposition where an unobserved object exists in multiple states at once until observed. In the case of the cat, you lock a cat in a box and leave it there for a while. Until observed, it is both dead and alive. The final important discovery here is Stanley revealing the most we'll get to know about Subject Delta's past, that he was a deep-sea diver that discovered Rapture on accident and became somewhat of a celebrity figure named Johnny Topside. Ryan didn't trust him, of course, so he had him sent to Persephone, where he was used in the Protector program. Also, as Delta returns to the train station, Lamb reveals that Stanley turned Johnny Topside into Ryan, thus also being responsible for his transformation. Just like Grace, Delta is given the choice to kill Stanley or not. He may have made some mistakes in the past, but he doesn't deserve to die. And now that the path is open, we can press on to Fontaine Futuristics with the knowledge that Sophia plans to inject Eleanor with the atom from everyone in Rapture to make her the first ever truly selfless being. And Andrew Ryan's the evil one? I know we were told that Fontaine Futuristics is where Eleanor can be found, but that's not the entire truth of the matter. Sophia is somewhere underneath Fontaine Futuristics, so Sinclair says we have to sneak through the place and find her, because sneaking is a Big Daddy's strong suit. Progressing from the train station to the actual Fontaine Futuristics building, Delta gets an important message.
October 9th, 1967. Hello. My name is Gilbert Alexander, and by the time you hear this, I will be clinically insane. I am recording these diaries in advance as a last-ditch effort to assist anyone I might threaten in dealing with me. My next message awaits you beyond the security checkpoint. The bioscan will ensure that you're sane enough to need it.
Gilbert Alexander, a premier figure in Big Daddy development, is the next subject of our focus, as he has since forcefully made himself CEO of Fontaine Futuristics with all the grace of Vince McMahon inserting himself where he isn't wanted. They even have the same catchphrase. Delta, after immediately failing to sneak, draws the ire of Alex the Great, the remains of Dr. Alexander after Sophia Lamb injected him with an extreme overdose of Adam to test her plan to create the first true utopian. Recordings from Gil before his mental and physical decline detail how he wants the listener to find him and kill him, apologizing for all of his present attempts to stop them, of which there are quite a lot. The first one is sending out another Alpha series to attack Delta, and despite being the last enemy type introduced, they aren't very strong. I mean, I get it, they're the same model as Delta, who is clearly weaker than the newer Big Daddy models. It just seems weird to save them for the ending stretch of the game. The access panel to where Alex the Great dwells is being blocked by his security bot singing the Fontaine Futuristics jingle.
Whopper, junior, double, triple, whopper.
So Delta has to scour the building and destroy his security relay points. While Delta does that, there are other things to go over, like this audio log from Sophia.
Prison, it seems, was a blessing. Ryan is now dead by his own son's hand. But far more interesting is the program of compulsion bred into his child, coded WYK. It was some manner of verbal trigger phrase, which the boy would obey as an order, unerringly. In a way, this sad thing, this half-man, had escaped the self. Highly intelligent, but devoid of so-called free will, with all its convenient blind spots. What if he had been instructed to uphold the common good? What if he were a volunteer?
I guess no one found Andrew Ryan's room where he laid out very clearly what WYK was code for.
If only they would have left some sort of clue!
It also begs the question how Sophia learned about Jack's mental conditioning, given that of the 5 people who knew about it, 3 of them are dead, 1 left the city, and the other is her opposition. There isn't nearly as much deleted content in Fontaine Futuristics, though it is interesting to note that there were plans to show how Adam is extracted from Little Sisters without killing them. Apparently it's very painful. As for the actual area itself, it's not my favorite. There isn't really anything special about the area that sets it apart, along with the fact that it's once again, go through this area and find all of these things, except now it's glowing tech bobs instead of Little Sisters. The only thing I'd really consider interesting is the unstable teleport plasmid located in Fontaine's office, but it's revealed to be the useless tonic vending expert 2, which reduces vending machine prices in a game where money is far from a scarcity. With the final signal relay destroyed, Delta unlocks the entrance to the real labs, the Plasmid Laboratories. And according to Sinclair, Sophia's hiding spot is hidden outside the Plasmid Lab entrance, and of course, Alex the not-so-great has the key to enter it. After flipping some breakers, Delta catches a glimpse of what remains of Dr. Alexander. And using the power of technology, I can give you a better look. In order to lure him back out, Delta has to once again go around the area and collect things, though this time it's Adam-infused plants. Thankfully, this area is not very large. Unlike the previous area, though, this one has quite the revelation hidden within.
Ask yourself, Mr. Meltzer, is it better to be summarily executed as an outsider caught within these grounds, or to be united not just with your daughter Cindy, but with the Rapture family as well? The choice is yours. I urge you to accept the Protector program. You will live by her side, and remember nothing beyond your love for her.
I wasn't the first to find Rapture, you crazy bitch. And I won't be the last. You do whatever you want to me. As long as I'm with Cindy, I'm a happy man.
Few stories in Rapture have happy endings, and this is no exception. Every player has that sinking feeling when they take down what they think is just another Big Daddy, only to see its name tag. To make her stand out a bit more, little sister Cindy was supposed to have blonde hair instead of the regular brown, and there was going to be an achievement for rescuing her, but both were cut due to the development time. Regardless, I give this Meltzer story 5 stars. And he's not in this room randomly. This is where big daddies are bonded to their little sister, most likely implying that this procedure happened very recently. On the subject of implications, it was originally going to be implied that Delta is Eleanor's biological father, though that idea was one of many that was scrapped. Returning with the flowers and luring Alex in, Delta gets the sample he needs and opens the secret path, and is once again given the choice to kill the used-to-be kinda sorta good doctor. If both Grace and Stanley were spared, this choice doesn't matter, and it's up to the player to decide if the moral choice is killing a man who wants to die or not taking a life at all. Before we depart from Mr. Alexander, I'd like to mention that his journey is vaguely based on the stories Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes and The End of the Whole Mess by Stephen King, both detailing the mental decline of a once bright mind. 2 stories that are both depressing as hell, though that feeling of sadness as you watch the decline isn't really seen here, despite the audio logs from Gil along the way providing a perfect opportunity to do so. But now Delta can head into the lair of the Lamb, Persephone, the main prison of Rapture. An audio log from Sophia in the entrance details how Eleanor is to become the people's daughter, but I thought that was Simone Johnson.
This will be no mere personality schism, though.
Or I guess we're going with Ava Raine then. And in case you're wondering about the history of Persephone, Sinclair's got you covered.
Persephone, secret home of Sinclair Solutions. I bet against Andy Ryan's vision of harmony and rapture, offered him a quiet place to send anybody who wasn't working out, and now I'm sitting on my own private think tank. Technically, Utopia shouldn't have much use for a detention facility, but if you do business as long as I have, well, you learn to pick a brand name from the writing on the wall.
Eleanor is being held in a quarantine chamber just ahead, but Sophia sends 2 big sisters out as one final attempt to take Delta down, and when that fails, she falls back to plan B.
Look at her, Delta. 10 years, and still she dreams of you.
50 seconds remaining.
Do you know why Eleanor brought you here? She wanted a father. So she found a way to restore you in body and mind. And she has been watching you ever since, exalting your every act as gospel. The girl lying on that bed is no longer my child, nor my life's work. She is a monster, shaped by you alone, just as she has always wanted.
20 seconds remaining.
But there is one detail of your mutual bond she failed to account for. Your body was designed to lapse into a coma when her heart ceases to beat. Eleanor, forgive me.
You know, really makes you wonder why Sophia didn't do that from the start. Regardless, Eleanor and Delta are both still alive, though the latter won't be for long, and Eleanor's plan to rescue him is by allowing him to control a little sister, as Eleanor did when she originally revived Delta, which allows us to see what they see while walking around this underwater hellscape, and it's now easy to understand why they're so positive all the time. Fun fact, Persephone as a whole was supposed to look like this normally, with Sophia fixing the place up after she took it over. Speaking of Sophia, she has an announcement to make.
Attention! Augustus Sinclair has been sighted within the facility. He will attempt to reach Subject Delta. All family duties are hereby suspended until he is found.
Hear that? Sinclair is truly a good friend. Anyway, Eleanor wants little sister Delta to collect pieces of a big sister suit for her to wear to assist him, and along the way we see statues representing Delta's choices throughout the game. They change depending on whether or not Grace, Stanley, and Gil were killed. All of Delta's key choices in the game, including if the little sisters were spared or not, shaping the person Eleanor has become. Eleanor also explains how the little sisters moved on so quickly from their paired protector to Delta, saying that the new batch of little sisters were all made from her, and using her connection to them, told them all to trust Delta. It shows how much they thought out the core of this story, even if it's not as impactful as the first. Bringing the suit pieces to Eleanor, she follows in her father's footsteps and rescues the little sister before freeing Delta from his constraints. And now it's bring your daughter to work day, as Delta obtains a plasmid that will allow Eleanor to fight alongside him for short periods of time. Sophia isn't too happy about this reunion with father and daughter, so plans to drop all of the upside down house into the trench below it. So Delta and Eleanor have to find Sinclair and inner Persephone and escape before house fall down go boom. I have to admit, I'm not a fan of this final section. The whole goal of the game from the start has been to reunite with Eleanor, and now that we have, an extra goal has been tacked on to the end with little setup beyond one line from Sophia a couple minutes ago. Regardless, they find Sinclair's lifeboat, noticeably missing the Southerner, and Sophia ominously ponders on his fate.
Don't you recognize Sinclair, Delta? Now he is what you should have been. One final Alpha series, ready to die for the family. As Persephone's former owner, he is the ideal man to put you back in your cage.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Sinclair is now nothing more than a puppet under Sophia's control. Andy is guarding the key we need to escape, meaning Delta has no choice but to put an end to his friend. There is some comfort in knowing that Sinclair wants this, saying it's his punishment for renting Delta out to become a big daddy, and that he'd rather die a man than live as what he's become. So let's do what we have to do.
So long, kid. Thank you.
I live in Spain. Without the S.
The key to the lifeboat is in hand, but the mission isn't quite over yet. Delta has to go through the pediatric ward and, with Eleanor's help, free the rest of the little sisters and use them to boil the water obstructing their path. Once done, Delta and Eleanor rush to the lifeboat, only to find that Sophia barricaded it with explosives. Eleanor teleports away just in time, but Delta isn't so lucky, grabbing onto the boat and ascending to the surface as the final cutscene plays.
And then, Father, the Rapture dream was over. You taught me that evil is just a word. Under the skin, it's simple pain. For you, mercy was victory. You sacrificed, you endured, and when given the chance, you forgave. Always. Mother believed this world was irredeemable, but she was wrong, Father. We are Utopia, you and I. And in forgiving, we left the door open for her. The Rapture dream is over, but in waking, I am reborn. This world is not ready for me, yet here I am. It would be so easy to misjudge them. You are my conscience, Father, and I need you to guide me. You will always be with me now, Father. Your memories, your drives. And when I need you, you'll be there on my shoulder, whispering. If utopia is not a place, but a people, then we must choose carefully, for the world is about to change. And in our story, Rapture was just the beginning.
If Delta harvested all the little sisters, you will get the bad ending, and if he rescued at least one and harvested at least one, you will get the neutral ending. If you spared at least one of Grace Holloway, Stanley Poole, or Gilbert Alexander, Eleanor will save Sophia. If you killed all three, Eleanor will kill Sophia. Now I know what everyone who played this game is thinking. What about the DLC story? You can't ignore that. And well, that tells me you're new here and should hit that subscribe button, because I never skip the DLC. Unless I feel like it, but I don't. So let's descend back down to Rapture once more before the conclusion and enter Minerva's Den. Both games so far had pretty intense openings, so let's see how this DLC introduces itself.
Subject Sigma is approaching Minerva's Den. He must not reach the thinker. Detonate the tunnel!
I'll accept that. Subject Sigma wakes up sometime later and is radioed by new-face Charles Milton Porter, who says Sigma has agreed to help get something called the Thinker out of Rapture. So now we know the who, what, when, and where, just not the why and how. Entering Minerva's den and needing to restore the building's power, Sigma finds an audio log from Andrew Ryan congratulating CM Porter on founding Rapture Central Computing, and a message from someone who clearly doesn't like Sophia Lamb's commie bullcrap. That is the handiwork of one Reed Wall, the man who blew us up a couple minutes ago. He founded Rapture Central Computing with Chick Magnet Porter, though eventually betrayed him to have sole control over the Thinker, a supercomputer that controls all the autonomy in Rapture. It should also be mentioned that Minerva's den is filled with splicers, and Sigma's only tools at this point are his drill and telekinesis, the least helpful plasmid in combat encounters, though he quickly finds a fucking laser gun, yeah. Chicago-made Porter, realizing how much Sigma is lacking in the offense department, tells him to head to his office, on the way picking up the security command plasmid, the one I described in the last one as very situational and not very helpful when you can just hack the cameras. So it's really 0-2 on plasmids right now. The Sigma soon finds a spear gun that already has an upgrade, so that kind of makes up for it. Unlike in the base game, there are no power to the people machines in Minerva's den. Instead, Sigma can find upgraded weapons scattered throughout the map. Cookie Monster Porter also provides more details on Reed Wall, saying that splicing drove him insane, shocking, and he is now obsessed with his predictive equation, basically using the Thinker to tell the future. If only there was a way to get insight into Reed's mind.
The Thinker has shown me so much. My outlook was limited before. Ball games and stock prices, dollars and cents. No, the numbers spiral out. They touch everything. Hidden within them lies a predictive algorithm for you, for me, for the destiny of the base allele to the stretch of a galaxy's arm. The Thinker is destined to give birth to that crystalline equation, which determines all. I thought I knew its true purpose before. I thought Porter was the fool. Now I see. I was the fool all along.
The numbers don't lie! And they spell disaster for you!
This room also contains the auto hack tool, immediately making redundant the security command plasmid. Fun fact, there was originally going to be a master clock to explore, a giant clock tower serving as Rapture's Big Ben that would be illuminated from within. It was scrapped, though the clock idea lived on in this room. The hack tool allows Sigma to enter Porter's office unharmed by splicers and containing an operations access punch card that will allow Sigma to enter operations, get to core access, and create a copy of the Thinker's machine code. You still following?
No.
We also get some backstory on mysterious Central Mixing Porter.
That first year in London working for Turing, I didn't see Pearl much. Spent all day and night in a government compound, building a computer to crack the Enigma machine. Pearl got pretty fed up with me. I didn't pay her heed. And then one night, I'm out in that complex, and the blitz starts falling. Next morning I came home to find nothing but ashes where I last saw her. Nothing but ashes.
Reed also mentioned in an audio log earlier that Porter had been feeding tapes of his deceased wife to the Thinker, and he was disgusted by the prospect of turning the Thinker human. Leaving the office and returning to the lobby, Sigma comes across a new type of Big Daddy known as the Lancer, supposedly the most technologically advanced Big Daddy model, complete with ion laser. Just like before, Sigma has to adopt little sisters and protect them as they harvest Adam from corpses, but unlike before, it doesn't affect the ending you get. There isn't an explanation for why they get attached to Sigma so quickly. Also, despite the fact that Minerva's den isn't connected to the rest of Rapture, and isn't in Sophia Lamb's Rapture family, Big Sisters will still come in to mess up your whole day.
What more do you want from me?
Speaking of messing up your day, the path forward is mag-locked, and according to Chris Masters Porter, the only way past it is the gravity well plasmid found in the airtight archives. Those should be easy to get in. The door to airtight archives can't be opened without the electrobolt plasmid, which is located somewhere in McClendon Robotics. So Sigma has to go through McClendon Robotics to get into the airtight archives to get into operations to then get to core access. Cool. McClendon Robotics also has the rivet gun, which unfortunately comes after two guns that are much better. But at least it's got trap rivets. There's nothing else of note in the robotics lab except the brief mention that's where our friendly security bots come from, before taking the electrobolt plasmid from some creepy little girl robots, thanks. Now in airtight archives, Sigma can find the shotgun, along with an audio log from Reed revealing that he got criminal mastermind Porter arrested by implicating him in the schemes of Frank Fontaine. And it happens to be right across from Gravity Well, which pulls enemies towards it whenever you throw it.
Well, in that case...
With Gravity Well, Sigma can backtrack to obtain the grenade launcher or just progress downward to operations. While Reed questions the relationship between Corkscrew, Moonsault, Porter, and Sigma, Porter says Sigma has to reprogram a signal beacon in order to escape Rapture without being blown to metallic pieces by Sophia's torpedoes. Why that can't wait until after Sigma copies the Thinker, I have no idea. Sigma heads out to the mechanical graveyard that is the seafloor outside Minerva's den to retrieve a bathysphere signal beacon, and then he can pick up an audio log from old pal Tenenbaum saying that she reached out to Computer Matrix Porter about using the Thinker to create a cure for splicing that works on more than just little sisters, and that she is the one who located Subject Sigma to assist them. Sigma being the other person that Tenenbaum had to go help when she left Delta in the care of the dearly departed Sinclair. The next location of interest is data processing, as it's not only where Delta can find the machine gun, the final weapon, but also where he can find Spitfire, a very primitive video game like Tennis for Two or Space War. You control the X and shoot other ships for points while dodging their bullets and asteroids. The difficult part comes in that the bullets shooting whatever direction you're moving in. Also, there's a trophy for getting the max amount of points and breaking the game, which I'm only mentioning so I can brag about doing it first try. Sigma then enters Reed Wall's office, finding his hidden room and using the computer there to hack the signal beacon with Chocolate Mousse Porter's help. Now there's nothing left to do but head into core processing. Except it is frozen, so Sigma first has to head into climate control and heat things up a bit. At least it comes with a free Incinerate too. Inside core processing is an audio log from Andrew Ryan saying that he received a recording of Porter's own voice swearing allegiance to Frank Fontaine, which is quite interesting, but not as interesting as this frozen splicer doing his best Ricky Starks impression. Chasing Reed deeper into mainframe access, he begins to question how Porter reappeared in Minerva's den, saying a man sent to Persephone doesn't just walk out. Maybe this audio log surrounded by weird Riddler writing will elucidate this matter.
Well, Thinker, Ryan's secret police are on their way. They cooked up some kind of evidence against me. Treason, they say. I've heard what happens to folks who get disappeared, come back as one of those nettle daddies. So, I'm leaving you with something to cogitate on in my absence. Inputting Rapture Departure Protocol. Figure a way to get yourself out of this city, Thinker. You've got to live on, no matter what happens to me. You'll find a way.
I'll explain in a minute, but right now Sigma has to take down Reed and his Lancer squadron after shutting the Thinker down. With him defeated, Sigma can finish printing the Thinker's code.
Mainframe reactivated. Confirming user's genetic identity. Genetic identity confirmed. Alpha Series. Subject Sigma. Former identity. Charles Milton Porter.
Welcome back, Milton.
System ending personality duplication. Subject Charles Milton Porter.
You see now why I let the machine speak for you, Mr. Porter. We needed a voice that would be familiar, comforting, your own. With that copy of the Thinker's programming, we may return to the surface and use it to restore you to the man you once were. Please, collect the printout and meet me at your bathysphere dock. Take your time, Mr. Porter. I will be waiting.
In an homage to System Shock 2, the Charles Milton Porter that we've been talking to all along was the Thinker using its voice modification function to carry out the Rapture departure protocol that Porter had installed before being sent to Persephone and turned into Subject Sigma. It's also who Tenenbaum talked to, and why Sigma specifically was chosen to carry the mission out. While Porter makes his walk to the bathysphere, there is an audio log showing the Thinker replicating Pearl's voice perfectly, but Porter realizing it isn't right and shutting it down. I really wish we got this log before the big reveal so we know ahead of time that the Thinker can replicate voices, as really the only indication before that is Ryan saying he has a tape of Porter swearing allegiance to Fontaine, which you realize in retrospect was most likely Reed using the Thinker to replicate Porter's voice. But now, it's time for the final cutscene.
I lived through the Blitz, Pearl, and the fall of Rapture. They took my memory, my voice, everything that made me a man, but nothing ever scared me so much as saying goodbye. I wanted to save you. I couldn't resist trying to bring you back the only way I knew how. But you didn't want that. I know it now, and I think I'm finally ready to let you go your way. I stand here with the sun on my face, and it's almost like I can feel you smiling. Goodbye, Pearl. I love you more than I've got words for. Milton.
This isn't like the last time where I rave about a game saying nothing that hasn't been said before about how revolutionary and important this game is, because this is nowhere near that. I know it's not a hot take to say that BioShock 2 is the worst game in the series, but that doesn't make it any less true. That being said, there are some things to enjoy about it. Returning to Rapture and expanding on the history and population while also expanding on corners of the world that went underexplained in the previous game was certainly appreciated, along with all of the quality fixes like dual wielding and hacking, and Augustus Sinclair is my favorite companion character out of the three. As you'll see next time, Sinclair is the only one who is upfront and honest with you about who he is from the beginning, and performs nothing short of a Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13 level face turn by leaving the safety of his lifeboat to rescue Sigma, only to get caught and turned into a Big Daddy himself. That and the Mark Meltzer storyline are the two biggest highlights of this game, and two of the biggest highlights from the series. While there is more good than bad here, there is its fair share of problems. While expanding on the relationship between the Big Daddies and Little Sisters made all the sense in the world, given that they are the two most iconic things in this series, I don't think there was enough to make a full game out of it, hence why the Sophia Lamb stuff is randomly ejected into it. This game is trying to tell this story about how chosen family is more important than blood, while also responding to BioShock's message of unchecked capitalism is bad with communism is also bad, which is far from an interesting theme to pursue. Being able to play as a Big Daddy was definitely a big selling point for the game, but having to adopt the Little Sisters and help them gather Adam turns those portions of the game into more of a chore, especially with the game being as easy as it is. After a while, money becomes almost a non-factor and you'll rarely ever get low on ammo. The developers said they didn't want to reveal Delta's name or more backstory so that players would feel more connected to him, hence why we only learned his nickname, Johnny Topside. But we learned Sigma's name, and I'm willing to bet way more players connect to Porter than Johnny. And that's a great way to segue into Minerva's Den, aka the first time I've ever seen a DLC be better than the main game. Honestly, they could have just expanded this into a full game and it would have been better. Charles Milton Porter is way more interesting than most of the characters in the base game, and the twist at the end is a far more impactful moment than almost anything that happens in Delta's journey. Overall, BioShock 2 gets a 6 out of 10. If you take Minerva's Den out of it, it would be a 5. I honestly just think the developers were wrong in saying that the story of Rapture wasn't over and that there was more to tell. There's a difference between telling the next chapter of a story we thought was over and adding on a new story to the end because you had to. None of the important characters in this were present in the first one outside of vague mentions of a Sinclair, and the only real connection between the two is Tenenbaum, who shows up for about 2 minutes. I appreciate the effort to connect the stories and the characters, but it never escapes the feeling of being tacked onto the end of a completed story for the sole purpose of making money. If a sequel has to spend so long justifying existence, you have to stop and think if it really should exist in the first place. That being said, there is fun to be had outside of the story. Now that we've completed our ascension, we can look down and, in the reflection of the water, see a city in the sky. I hope to see you there.
Bring us the curb and wipe away the debt!